And so one of the great fears that comes out of complex trauma is the fear of getting hurt. And so that's why change is something that also causes fear, because every time there's a change, there might be something new that you didn't anticipate was going to be in this change where you might get hurt. And so change triggers fear for most people from complex trauma because there's the possibility of getting hurt. The problem is in our world today that life equals change. Change is part of life. And for many people with complex trauma, that just creates trigger after trigger after trigger. Now, I want you to think about this with me just a little bit. And so we're going to start with this. Whenever there is a change, it causes stress. It activates our stress response system. Because a change means a new environment. A change means my brain now has to become familiar with that environment. It has to check out if the people in that environment are safe, if the environment is safe. It has to begin to sort and catalog all the different pieces of that environment so that it knows what to expect. And then I may have to learn new skills in order to handle this environment. I may need to meet new people and develop new relationships. So moving to a new environment or change causes stress on our system. Our brain has a lot of work to do to sort out, to get into a routine, to figure out if it's safe. It has to do all of that before it can relax. So I think you can see that any change then is a stressful thing. It activates the stress system in our body. So let me just give you an example of just a mild little change and have you think about how it affected you. So imagine that you are going to your friend's place and they've asked you to stay overnight. So you're sleeping in their house in a strange bed. There's other people in the house. So for a lot of people, that little change of sleeping in a different bed, in a different house, in a different location would mean they won't sleep very well that night. Maybe even the second night. And that shows that the stress system has been activated. Just by being in your friend's house, sleeping in a different bed, you can't relax. Part of your system is now on guard. Let's say that you go to an airport and you have to go to the washroom, or a sporting event and you have to go to the washroom and there's all kinds of people in the bathroom, and all of a sudden you get a shy bladder. You can't void your bladder. That's because your stress system has been activated by that change of how you go to the washroom, and so you can't do it. Or let's go back to you're gone to your friend's house, or you're on a work convention thing away from town, so you don't sleep the first night very well, but also you're not able to have a bowel movement because your stress system has been activated. You can't fully relax. And then for some people, just that little bit of a change, they can find themselves biting their nails again, picking at their fingers again, going back to old kind of self-soothing type habits that happens when they're nervous or have anxiety. For some, they might feel their asthma get triggered. If slight stress can cause their breathing to trigger their asthma. And so what I want you to see is if you come from complex trauma, even little changes that most people would say are no big deal, that are safe, you can't quite relax totally. Everything in your stress system is activated and it affects how your body functions. You're on guard. That's what change can do. How about COVID? All of a sudden, there's fear of catching COVID. All of a sudden, there's restrictions, so you can't go out and connect with friends. Lots of changes, fairly significant changes. How has that affected your mental health? How has that affected your emotional world? Has it led to going back to bad habits? Change has a profound effect. What can happen for many people as they start to work on themselves and get into recovery is they start challenging some of the beliefs that they were taught as a child, either in their home, in their church, in their culture. And now as they begin to challenge old beliefs, they're going through changes. They're changing how they think about things, how they see things. How did those changes affect you? What did it trigger inside of you? Or you're in recovery from addiction or trauma. You're changing your lifestyle. You're changing how you cope. You're changing your friends. Lots of changes are involved in getting healthy when you come out of addiction or trauma. For many people, that change triggers lots of things in others. They now oppose you. They don't like your changes. Or you go through times of self-doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Times of confusion. It triggers all kinds of different things. So I hope that helps you see that change for people from complex trauma causes a lot of fear. So what do we need to do? So first of all, grow in self-awareness. When you go through a change, the next time you go through a change, pay attention to what gets triggered inside of you. What are your natural thoughts that come? What kind of behaviors want to start acting out whenever you go through a change? So start becoming self-aware of how change affects you. And then what you need to understand is change triggers your limbic brain. And so the goal of recovery is to have my cortex running the show and not my limbic brain, because it's not a reliable guide. And so understand then that I have to keep working on figuring out how to de-escalate my limbic brain, get back into my cortex, process through stuff in a wise, healthy way, and not just react out of the limbic emotional center. All of that becomes so important. One of the things that's just very practical advice for people who are facing a change is to think about possible scenarios about how that change might affect you. Okay, I'm moving to a new city. I might go through some of these emotions. I might go through some of these temptations. So how am I going to prepare for that? What will I do when I get there and that temptation kicks in? How am I going to respond to that? And so you're preparing yourself in advance for possible scenarios that you might encounter when you go through a change. And then train yourself to sit in the discomfort of the emotions of change while your brain figures everything out slowly. Don't be afraid to talk to somebody when you're going through a time of change. Don't be afraid to ask for help. If you're finding lots of things are getting triggered and you're starting to feel overwhelmed and paralyzed. And then, when you're going through change, you still need a rock at the center. You still need to be able to connect to something stable, secure, consistent, reliable. That could be your higher power. That could be another person. But you need that secure connection internally. And then I think the best way to end this is just the famous serenity prayer, to have the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.